Mark?
Mr. Bigtree, how are you?
I'm really good, Mario. It's great to be here.
I have to be honest, that speech was insane. And for anyone that hasn't watched it, your speech at Rescue the Republic right now, my first question for you, I'm like, man, are you running for president? You haven't told any of us. That was an incredible speech.
Thank you.
But I like the first thing you brought up was about the health of the nation.
Yeah.
Obviously, you talk about this on your podcast very extensively.
Yeah.
You're one of the first, if not the first person to start kind of shining the light on the other side of the vaccines. You know, it's not all roses and rainbows. My first question for you is, why is no one talking about this? It feels like it's like that silent killer of the country. No one knows the numbers. No one knows how impactful it's been negatively to the country. So maybe give us some numbers, some figures on why people should pay attention to the health of the American people.
Well, I mean, look, this right now, where we're sitting in the United States of America, we are the sickest nation in the industrialized world. There's no one that has sicker kids or sicker adults than we do. This is the sickest generation of children we've ever seen in the United States of America. So when they try to brag about our medical system, we have the biggest hospitals in the world and more doctors and nurses than anybody. But when you look at COVID, for instance, we had 16% of the deaths in the world. I mean, yeah, 60% of the deaths. We're only 4% of the world. So we had the worst death rates from COVID. So everything that we're doing.
Is that because of obesity or other underlying health issues?
Multiple things. Yes, because we're so sick. Obesity, diabetes, all sorts of autoimmune disease. We have the highest rates of chronic illness in the world. Nobody has more autoimmune disease than we do anywhere.
That's insane.
So something is tragically wrong. And so you've got to ask yourself, why are we so sick? Why is it our kids have a peanut allergy where they can't have peanuts on an airplane or in a school? When did that start? If you talk to your grandparents or even your parents, they're like, I never heard of such a thing as a peanut allergy. Now we all know about it.
Everyone gets a warning about it.
When we all went and saw Rain Man, we were like, wow, this is a crazy story. This weird little guy like running around, like, you know, good at cards, but can't seem to do anything else. We never heard of it before. Now every one of us knows someone with autism. We know families with autism because it's skyrocketed from 1 in 10,000 to now 1 in like 33. And so people can say, you know, we could argue, and we should be arguing over what's causing it. What we should not be doing is sticking our heads in the sand and not talking about it. And the fact that no one in the press in the United States of America is asking, why is autism so high? 1 in 34, 1 in 36. It's more prevalent in boys. That means that boys are probably, that's the overall boys and girls. It's like 1 in 22 boys right now has autism in America. We are on the verge of not being able to mount a standing army. If we keep going this direction, we're not going to be able to mount a standing Starbucks. And so what I did, because I came from the CBS talk show, The Doctors, that's where I got involved in making medical television. You know, I'm a journalist. Just ask the question, what is going on? Why are our kids so sick? And you really only have a few things. It all starts in right around 1989. This entire explosion of all these autoimmune diseases, autism, lupus, cancers in children, all of it skyrocketing, ADD, ADHD, these things that you never really heard of, diabetes. I mean, I think it's nearly 50% of kids are pre-diabetic or moving towards diabetes. Nearly 70% of Americans are now obese or on the verge of obesity.
70%?
It's crazy. 70, like, to get into the military, which is a pretty low bar right now, right? 77% of the people trying out aren't allowed in because of health problems. So when people say, well, you know, the military is really the most important thing to talk about in the United States of America during this election. Oh, really? What happens if you don't have a military? What happens if you don't have enough healthy people to be able to defend your nation? These are the questions we should be asking ourselves. Asking, why is it happening? What is going on?
So let me ask you a question. Maybe there's no, I'm sure there's no straight answer on why this is happening, but the correlations are there, and there's a few factors we could look at. Number one, like the numbers are insane. I knew they're bad.
They're bad.
I didn't know they're that bad.
Insanely bad. Yeah. So when you look at like vaccines, which is one of the things that I'm, you know, was the focus of the work that I did. I left CBS because I was making a documentary about a whistleblower in the CDC that came forward and said, we're committing scientific fraud in the vaccine safety studies. He handed over 10,000 documents that I looked at, and I made a movie about that. I said, they're lying. They know that vaccines are correlated and you know, with autism, and every time they see it, they're throwing the data out. And so people can say whatever, oh, that's misinformation.
Our friend James Hackman told me so many stories of these,
Yes.
like they just literally wipe out the information.
That's it. They wipe out the information. But here's what we know. when we were only getting like 10 vaccines prior to 1989, or actually 1986, but in the early 80s, we were up to 10 vaccines. Our chronic illness rate was about 12%. 12% of our kids had chronic illness. As soon as we took liability away from the industry, it happened in 1986, called the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, okay? Takes liability away from the industry.
How? Explain for the audience, like, how did they take out the liability? What is the immunity that they have?
They basically said to the government, we're going to blackmail you. We're going to stop making all vaccines unless you protect us from liability. So the Congress passed this protection that no other product in America gets, which is it doesn't matter if it kills hundreds of people, you cannot sue the manufacturer.
Does that happen outside the U.S. as well, many countries?
No.
Any countries?
It doesn't. I mean, I don't know how the other countries are set up. I'm not as detailed in that.
Never heard
but
of
I do know that mostly you can sue, but because, like in England, your healthcare system's so intertwined with your politics and your government, it's all sort of subsidized. It's got some other issues to not being able to sue. But you can't sue in America. And as soon as we did that, we went from 10 vaccines to now basically 54 vaccines given to kids by the time they're 18. And when you watch that explosion in the vaccine program, you watch the same explosion in health. We went from 12% chronic illness to now 52%. Some people say as high as 60% are chronically ill. That's two categories, neurological disorders and autoimmune disease. And so what's causing? What I would say, people say, Del, how do you know it's not like the air? Like, you know, we got pollution in the air. How do you know it's not the fluoride in our water? Which, by the way, we just won a huge lawsuit on that here in the United States of America. Yeah, absolutely. We now know that fluoride is causing developmental disabilities in children.
Tap water, yeah?
Huh?
Tap water?
Tap water. It's in most of our tap water. So you're going to watch us fight that battle to get that out of our water now that the EPA just lost a lawsuit on that. But, okay, you got fluoride. Then you can look at pesticides sprayed all over our crops. Glyphosate is sprayed over 90% of our crops. Seriously big problem. But when you look at vaccines, this is what I would say. When autoimmune disease is your issue, that means your own immune system is attacking cells in your own body. Something that we never used to hear about. Never happened 100 years ago. 50 years ago even, it was so rare that somebody had their own immune system attacking the cells in their body. Well, what happened? We can look at all those products, and we should, but let's talk about a vaccine for a second. What does a vaccine do? If you stop someone on the street and said, how does a vaccine work? They'd say, well, I think you kind of, like kill a virus or you deaden its power, and then you inject it into you, and your body thinks it's been infected, so you trick it into think it's had an infection, and it creates immunity, right? Really basic. That's how most people would think about it. Well, let's think about this. It's tricking the immune system. It's tricking the immune system. We're not tricking the immune system one time. We're not tricking it 5 times. We're not tricking it 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 50 times. 72 vaccines are given to our kids. 72 times we make the body think it's under attack by a virus or a bacteria. And then it has to somehow mount an immunity. And somehow in that, we're shocked that when we trick the immune system, it maybe gets confused and starts attacking cells in your own body. By the way, when it's working, it's making your body feel like it's under attack so that it will cause antibodies. What happens if you eat wheat that day? What happens if you walk by some weeds on the ground, or you eat a peanut while you just took a vaccine where the body is saying, I'm under attack, I'm supposed to see everything as my enemy? Where do we think these autoimmune diseases are coming from, these allergies? You're vaccinating these kids all the time. You're triggering, it's like opening up their hard drive and letting a virus in, and when it's under attack, it starts thinking everything's the enemy. And that's why we are sick. I believe that's why we are sick. And that's why we're sending Robert Kennedy Jr. to the White House with Donald Trump to get all of the funding from Pharma out of our regulatory agencies so that we can just have a fair fight. Let's do real crash test studies, not crash tests by the people that made the car. How about the people that think maybe it doesn't work? Let's go in and test the system.
Holy shit. Okay. So the first question I have is from a selfish question. I'm deep into longevity.
Yes.
I've worked with a few doctors. I follow Brian Johnson's. I'm not sure if you looked into longevity much and anti-aging.
I speak at longevity conferences.
There you go. I'm obsessed with longevity.
Yeah.
I have a whole team that deals with it. So I don't know much about it, but I know I take a lot of supplements, and every single thing I eat, they monitor.
Yep.
So I take this stuff very seriously. That's why I said it's a selfish question. A lot of us have already had the vaccine as kids. Now, obviously, your cause is mainly for children that are born to not have to go through what we've been through.
Correct.
For people that already took the vaccine that are listening to this, because obviously most of my audience are adults.
Yeah.
Is there anything you could do to reverse some of the negative impacts it had?
Yeah, there is. But I mean, I don't really focus on that as much. There's plenty of doctors and alternative health, specialists. Like I know one guy that's like the greatest scientist on aluminum. Aluminum is one of the biggest adjuvants.
Bobby talks about it. Mr. Kenny talks about it a lot.
Really bad stuff. But that scientist, who studied aluminum his whole life, suddenly tracked it in the body. Well, how's it getting there? And said, oh my God, it's in these vaccines. I know he drinks Fiji water every day of his life. Why? Because it has silica in it. Silica binds to aluminum, and it helps get it out of his body. I'm not recommending that. I'm telling you, the guy who knows more about aluminum than anyone in the world, Dr. Chris Exley, he drinks water with silica in it to chelate that aluminum out. All sorts of things like that you can be doing. But I want to make it clear. We live in a toxic world and we know it, right? But we got to stop the toxins that we have control over and try to minimize it. And there's no going back. Every one of us learns the lessons when we do. All I would say is this: if the vaccines haven't hurt you yet, stop. Great, you're ahead of the game. But I will tell you this: if you're into longevity, that is the last product you should ever put into your body.
What is the? Wish you told me that before COVID. What are the hurdles that you think Bobby will face and that you're facing already? Pharmaceutical companies have plenty of money. Misaligned incentives with mainstream media has allowed them to have enough impact on speech in general to kind of paint that certain picture about the vaccines and anything else they're really selling to us. So I'm not going to put them in a basket of they're all evil. I think maybe it's a positive cause. They have good intentions.
Yeah.
Some of them are choosing money over the cause, and they get carried away. And then with the incentive structure in the media, it's made it very easy to facilitate it for them to allow them to do this. So I think what Bobby will do is kind of systematically make, as for example, not allowing. What was the thing he said? The one thing is pharmaceutical companies will not be able to advertise. Correct?
Exactly. Just get the advertising out of television, so they don't control the TV.
How difficult is it to achieve? How embedded is this now? The system, the corrupt system that I've just gone through, that you know a lot more about. How embedded is it, and can Bobby do it alone?
I don't think anyone can do anything alone. And I think that we are in the sort of last stages of a total takeover of our lives. The pharmaceutical industry is the most powerful lobby in Washington. It's outspending oil and gas by 5 times. For every dollar oil and gas, and we fight wars for that oil and gas, by the way, Pharma is spending 5 times that in this city right here, right now, buying your politicians in their offices all the time. More lobbyists than anyone else has, and it's happening all across the world. It's why they got away with COVID. It's why they got away with, you didn't need a vaccine. Dude, as healthy as you are, that virus, you would never even felt it. I didn't get a vaccine. I was sick for 2 hours when I got COVID. Nobody needed it, except the elderly over the age of about 70 or 80 that had 2, 3, 4 comorbidities. So you got suckered by a system now that owns your television. It's telling you not only is it going to make you healthy, it's guilting you into saying if you don't do it, you're not protecting your neighbor, which was a total lie. I was saying on my show at that time, it's not stopping transmission. It says it right in the documents of the emergency use authorization. They never tested to see if it could stop transmission. They're lying to you. Well, I got censored. My YouTube came down. Facebook came down.
It's crazy.
But here's the point. Where we're at right now, yes, it's going to be very difficult. Some would even say impossible. But I would say this, that it doesn't matter what country you grow up in. We all have history books. And those history books, never when you turn a page do you open up to a page that says, oh, we outnumbered them 500-1 and the battle lasted for 25 minutes. No one writes about that. It happens. There's times when we all brutalize and overpower something. What you read about in history are insurmountable odds and people that reach down deep and do something that's supernatural, that they just for some reason are driven by something you can never explain. And they find other people, small groups of people that believe the same thing, and they storm a castle or they come together as clans and they go in and they say, no more. And they stop what is happening. They fight like hell. And that is what happens every time history is made. And this is just simply one of those moments in time where we are either going to watch censorship take over, your show will be shut down, mine will be shut down. If we watch this next election in 37 days, could decide whether we have free speech in the United States of America. And if we lose it, by the way, everyone does. They're arresting people in Europe. They're starting to arrest people in England for sharing
I had Tommy Robinson
videos.
On my show. I know exactly what
you must be terrified. You got to move over here right away. And then we got to win this election right now. But look at what we're talking about. If we cannot speak, if we cannot have these conversations, and even if we're both batshit crazy, people are allowed to watch it and make their opinions. That is what freedom of speech means in America. Doesn't mean it all has to be true or right or whatever it is. And I'll say this, after COVID, we know the only real liars around COVID was the government itself. Saying it would stop transmission and it doesn't. Saying it was safe and it's not. It is swelling the hearts of children and we know it. It's also causing IgG formation, which is the antibodies you don't want. They're shutting down your immune system. So after your second shot, when you go into your third, fourth, it now down-regulates your immune system, so you're now vulnerable to every virus and disease that's out there, and especially vulnerable to COVID in the future. So everyone has to stop right where they're at. Your body.
Is anyone taking the vaccine anymore?
Huh? Here in America, only less than 10% of those that are up for the booster are getting it. I feel sorry for those people. I don't know why they would do it.
Still at 10%. I didn't know it was even that high. For me now, that's higher than I expected.
No one would be that crazy.
What was it before? What was it at the peak?
I mean, look, before COVID, the vaccine uptake rate was 90, 95%.
Now everyone's questioning the vaccines.
And then only 70% got it here in America. And now I would say 50% will never do that again. And so whatever they tried to do, they have failed. People are waking up to the fact that, wait a minute, you don't care if it's safe. You lied to me that it would stop transmission. You made me feel like I should act like a Nazi and turn in people that weren't getting vaccinated or weren't wearing their masks. And now I find out none of that was true. We have Tony Fauci sitting in front of the Congress, when they said the 6-foot distance rule, where was the scientific, background? That's like, oh no, there was no science. It just kind of popped up. It just kind of happened. Wait a minute. You locked us down on we all just kind of thought, hey, 6 feet sounds good. I mean, that's not science. And here's the guy that said, if you question me, you're questioning science. So once you realize that the people are telling you that they're the harbor, they're the keepers of the truth, and you catch them not in 1 lie, but 2 lies and 5 lies and 10 lies, at a certain point you realize you better stand up for yourself. You better stand up for the truth. And that's what has to happen right now.
Wow. We gotta have you back on the show. And I'm not saying you're so eloquent in describing the issue. And you know the numbers off by heart. And I genuinely think, similar to, I was interviewing the president of Hungary yesterday. I was in Hungary yesterday, 2 days ago, sorry. And we're talking about population collapse, which Elon, her, and others are talking about. And it's an issue that's not sexy. No one really talks about it. But it's a very, very serious issue. The same thing here. Yeah. This is a very serious issue that impacts pretty much most of the people walking around us in one way or another. Right. Not only about vaccines or the food that we eat, the water that we drink. Yeah. Even the air that we breathe in some countries, but it's just not as interesting to talk about as everything else that everyone talks about on mainstream media. So it is something I'm really passionate about. As I said, I'd love to do this again, man. But
it's the same, just to that point, it's the same thing they're doing there. What are we being told by the television? We're overpopulated, that there's too many of us, that the problem with the earth is there's too many of us. Yeah. Meanwhile, we're in decline. We're not going to be able to take it. We're not going to be able to take care of each other. It's so horrifying.
In this century, in our lifetime, you wouldn't believe Asia, Korea, Japan, China, Europe, Latin America will all decline by plus or minus 40 to 60%. Population will decline in our lifetime.
It's devastating.
These are things that once you start to realize this, holy shit, COVID didn't do that. Yeah, everyone was talking about COVID.
Right,
but it's happening right now.
Yeah.
Mr. Bigtree, pleasure to have you.
Good talking
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll do it again.
Thank you so much. Incredible speaker,
man.
Holy shit.
Thank you.